Hello and welcome to my humble little spaceship. I'm certainly not kidding when I say housing is one of the strongest parts of WildStar, and I have probably spent far too much time simply hoarding items and designing the interior of my house. But you don't need to go for a spaceship. You could also make your own futuristic bar, or maybe you're not even looking to create a cozy home, but instead want to build an elaborate jumping puzzle. Here's an overview and guide of how housing works in WildStar, and why you should even bother in the first place. Let's start with the basics. Once you hit level 14 and you go over to your faction's capital city, you'll be prompted to get your own amazing housing plot by a Protostar housing specialist. After doing this brief quest, you'll be transported to your own house in the air. Well, at this point it's just an empty piece of grassland, but you'll find that a new menu has popped up. The first option in this menu is the landscape button. Here you can select what type of home you want, located within the middle 2x2 plot, though you don't necessarily need one. You only have access to house types from your faction, and you will have to wait until level 36 until the spacious types are available. Again, though, you don't necessarily need one and could build a house from scratch if you so desire. At the top you have 2 1x2 plots, and to the sides you have 4 smaller 1x1 plots. The majority of enhancements you can place on these plots require fabrication kits. These are either items dropped from mobs, created by players with the architect trade skill, or they can be bought from vendors if you have the required level of reputation. Lastly, festival kits are awarded by leveling up your path. These enhancements come in various different shapes and types. Crafting and material enhancements allow you to gather resources for trade skills, challenge enhancements can be done on a daily basis for rewards, and some enhancements even offer events and expeditions that can be done on a daily basis for rewards as well. Finally, there are simply decorative enhancements. All of the enhancements which aren't purely decorative and have some sort of functionality, even if it's just a little gimmick, are on a 7-day timer. Once this expires, they have to be repaired for the same price as their purchase cost. That being said though, a broken enhancement doesn't disappear, and will stay on your plot but simply can't be used, it's just cosmetic at that point. The second tab is the Remodel Menu. This menu allows you to change various different external or internal parts of your house and the entire sky dome that surrounds your housing plot. These have to be rebought every time you change that specific part though, and are purely cosmetic. They don't change any functionality or the internal space of your house. In this menu, you can also change your plot's name, change the balance between what you and your neighbors get, we'll get into that in a moment, and set your plot to private or public. Thirdly, the crate is where all your decor items go after obtaining them, and you'll have to initially place them from this menu. Number 4 is the Housing Item Vendor. This shop offers quite a number of different items that can be bought through gold, silver, or renown, but you won't nearly find all of the housing items in this shop. Plenty are dropped, created by players with the architect profession, or again bought from reputation vendors. Number 5 is your placed decor list, a list of every item you've placed anywhere on your plot, both inside and outside of your house, and basically this list offers an easier way to recover any item without having to find them first on your plot. And number 6 toggles editing mode, which allows you to right click on any item in your plot and edit them in any way you wish. But it is worth noting that while editing mode is on, you won't have any functionality from placed items such as, say, the mailbox. Turning editing mode off then allows you to happily check your mail. Now then, placing items is pretty easy. You go to your crate, select the item you want to place, and right click on any location. Initially it will just roughly place your item on the correct axis, but it'll likely end up clipping through various sections. So, clicking the Toggle Prop Options button followed by the Toggle Advanced Controls button opens up a new menu and allows for much finer placement. Here you can change the item's positioning by using the exact numbers on every different axis. And you can also click the Advanced Mode option, giving you the easiest way to edit your items directly and in good detail. While the Advanced Mode is on, you can freely move the item forwards, backwards, up, down, left, right, basically every single axis, plus the ability to rotate the item. The Advanced menu also gives you access to cloning or copying any transformation on an item. At the bottom of this menu you have 3 tiny buttons. The first is Location, Rotation, and finally Size. Very useful for having, say, a uniform wall or floor design. Maybe you have a couple of boxes that might not be the same size, simply select the size button, click copy transform, click on the second box and click paste transform, size consistency guaranteed. A few other things to keep in mind though while editing in advanced mode is that left clicking anywhere off the item will accept any changes, while right clicking off the item will undo any changes and revert it back to its previously saved state. Which is quite useful for when, say, you've accidentally made some big changes to an item you don't want. So those are the basics and a few advanced tricks for building and designing your plot, but why, beyond it simply being a ton of fun, you boring person, should you bother in the first place? For starters, a very obvious one is the first board you see when you enter your plot, the housing bonus board. This board allows you to get one of several reward increasing buffs every day for questing, group PvE, or PvP. The buffs here cycle between 10% and 5% depending on the day and last 24 hours. You can of course only select one every day. Secondly, you can visit a number of public housing plots through the social menu under the Neighbors tab. The bottom button gives you a randomized list every time you click it, allowing you to go out there and visit every stranger in their own home. If you have your home set to public, this is how they'll find yours, so you can let them in, naturally drive them off with a shotgun, and visit their places. Every challenge or expedition they have placed on their housing plot can be done by you or any other visitor. Again, you can do these challenges successfully once every day, allowing you to gather some rewards by simply wandering around strangers' plots and completing all their challenges. The neighboring system then allows you to set up a small group of people with whom you can share resources. Essentially, this way you can share materials with one another. Say you have it set to 50-50, you will get half the resources every time you use their material plots, such as gardens or mining sites. This technically allows a whole group of people to benefit from maintaining each other's resource plots. Furthermore, there's a roommate system, and if the plot owner has set you as his or her roommate, you can adjust all their items, or even purchase items from your own money and place it on their housing plot, allowing multiple people to manage and decorate one housing plot. That being said, using the place decor list to return every item to their crate on their plot is a no-go. Then last, but certainly not least, is the hugely important scaling rested XP bonus you can get from housing. In WildStar, the amount of rested XP you gain after logging out is based on where exactly you log out. Without a housing plot, the most you can get is by logging out in your capital, but logging out in a housing plot, even if you have nothing in it, is far more effective. You can increase this rested XP bonus from housing even more by placing certain decor items. There's 5 different types of rested XP buffs: Pride, Ambience, Aroma, Lighting, and Comfort. These different buffs then come in 3 different levels: Small, Medium, and Large. For instance, I achieved this Pride Large buff by placing this well-stocked trophy cabinet. So I went ahead and tested the different levels, Small, Medium, and Large, and wanted to see how exactly you could gain rested XP and how much through housing. Here's the results of some experimenting I did with various different decor buffs. This was done while my character was level 44, rested XP does scale, and I recorded how much I gained every 15 and 5 minutes. You can forget these numbers almost immediately though, but they do prove some interesting points. Waiting for 15 minutes in Thade, the XL capital, gave me roughly 682 rested experience. Emptying my house plot and waiting for 15 minutes there, so without any buffs, then gave me about 1.5 times as much as Thade did, 1023, significantly more. Adding one small decor buff, again significantly increased this further to 1500 XP. Having nothing but one medium buff gave me 1635 rested XP, and having nothing but one large buff gave me 1780 rested XP. As you can see, there's an expected increase with every different buff level. Testing 5 large buffs, one of every type, then gave me the maximum amount of rested XP available, roughly 2388 at my level, which equals about 3.5 times as much as your capital would give you. Adding all my small and medium buffs to these 5 large buffs did not increase this any further, nor did adding multiple large buffs. The maximum remained at 2388. I then wanted to know whether you really needed those large buffs in the first place to achieve maximum rested XP. So I removed the large buffs and placed every single medium and small buff I had available, and again noted that I gained 2388 XP. Furthermore, I then wanted to know whether you could only get this by logging out in your own housing plot, or if you would get the same or less by logging out at someone else's housing plot. Testing each of the previously mentioned conditions then gave me basically the same amount and the maximum rested XP of 2388 when I logged out at a neighbor's housing plot. In conclusion, these numbers prove a few points. An empty housing plot gives you about 1.5 times as much as logging out in your capital, significantly more. The maximum amount of Reset XP you can get is equal to 3.5 times as much as your capital. Small and medium buffs do stack, you don't need large items necessarily. And finally, you can get the same amount when logging out at a neighbor. In fact, although it was difficult to test exactly, I did notice that I gained about the same amount of XP when logging out at someone who wasn't my neighbor, and had placed a huge amount of items, implying you don't even need to be a neighbor, and Reset XP is truly just based on where you log out. Either way, it means that if your neighbor has maxed Reset XP, or at the very least more than you have in your housing plot, it is worth logging out in his or her plot. This is, of course, also quite handy when you're leveling an alt. And that there is my overview and guide of housing in WildStar. In short, I've had a blast simply messing around, designing different sections of my housing plot, and can confidently state that it is an incredibly well done aspect of WildStar that's both fun and rewarding. Now, if you don't mind, I have to rebuild my house. As always, my name's been Haas, and I'll see you in the next video.